Hello, and welcome to the Inside Social Work podcast, where we take a peek behind the scenes into different fields of social work, engage and inspire practitioners, translate research into practice, and encourage lifelong learning. I'm your host, Marie Vakakis. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode. Welcome to episode 10 of the Inside Social Work podcast. Today I'm interviewing Khadine Aharon, who's an accredited social worker who specialises in EFT, which is emotional freedom techniques. She has more than 25 years of combined experience in community services and natural therapy industries. Khadine has worked with hundreds of people in individual, group and community settings. EFT has become one of her favourite transformational tools, and she's passionate about sharing this technique with others. Khadine effortlessly combines her knowledge and skills to provide an interactive, practical and safe space for students to learn EFT tapping. And she's got a special promo for our Inside Social Work listeners. If you mention this podcast at the time of booking a course, she'll offer you $50 off one of those EFT courses. So nice deal there for you, and you can find some details in the show notes about the website for her website and details about upcoming trainings. Welcome, Khadine.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. It's so glad to meet you, I guess.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me, Marie.
So could you share with the audience a little bit about your social work journey and how you ended up specialising in EFT?
My social work journey, wow. It's actually a big question. I mean, originally I started off in natural therapies, and at 25 I became really unwell and suddenly couldn't work anymore. And I thought, what am I going to do? I can't work. I can't go from a 50-hour week to nothing. So I started studying community services at TAFE. And when that had finished, I still wasn't able to work. And I thought, well, what's next? So I thought I'd give uni a go. And that's how I sort of ventured into the area of social work. And, for me, it's not been like a typical journey due to my health issues. So when I got to uni, I found that I couldn't read the readings. It would take me 10 attempts to read a single sentence to make sense of it. And I didn't know what was happening. And eventually I found out that my health condition was affecting how my brain was processing things. And I went from the highest distinctions in get a TAFE to failing. And I had to pretty much change the system at uni to allow me to study part-time. So that really started my social work journey, having to change the system, even in social work, believe it or not. In order for me to have access and equity at that time.
It sounds like maybe it was inside you all along, that idea of advocacy and changing the system a little bit to meet people's individual needs.
Well, yeah, I mean, in social work we're supposed to be about access and equity, and I just found it kind of bizarre that it wasn't being offered in our training. So I had to change that, not just for me, but it meant that other people could also study part-time, which opened it up for people with living with other disabilities or single mums in particular, to be able to have that opportunity.
Wonderful. And what were some of the early positions you had? You said you worked in community services. So what were some of the roles that you started off in as a social worker?
Yeah, so before I finished my degree, I was working in lesbian health as lesbian access worker at various women's health centres. And I also did, once I graduated, I worked in family support in a disability service organisation. It was shortly after that I decided it was much better for me to work for myself, really.
And what kind of led to the EFT? How did you become exposed to that? What kind of drew you to that method?
I was just exploring online for ways to help my health, and EFT popped up and I read it and I thought, oh, wow, I really need to learn that. So I enrolled in my first EFT training, and I was just amazed because when you attend EFT training, it's very practical. You're practicing with each other, and I picked an event traumatic event to work on that I thought I'd totally done in counselling. After years of counselling, totally done that. Oh no, they almost had to get a bucket for me to vomit in.
Wow, so it had quite a profound impact on you just doing the training.
That's right. So that event, I had no emotional response to thinking about it. Yet once we began the EFT process, all these emotions and physical sensations came up that my body had still been holding on to after all those years.
I find it such an interesting area of work that's making its way a little bit more prominently in private practice at the moment, is looking at not just talking therapies, but how the body holds trauma and how it holds pain and experience. So I think EFT is a really good one at looking at how we hold that within us, where traditional talking therapies might not. Like you said, you might not have an emotional connection to it just talking about it.
That's right, until you start tapping. And the beauty of EFT, or one of the beauties of it, is we don't have to actually talk about the traumatic event. When we're starting, we don't even need to talk about the emotions. We can just work on the physical sensations. And then that can have an impact on the emotions at the same time without actually directly working on the emotions.
Oh, it sounds really interesting. For those who don't know much about EFT, could you give us a little bit of an overview of what is EFT and maybe some of its origins or history and any research that kind of comes with that?
Yeah. There's a few questions there. I'll try and answer them all. You might have to remind me them. So EFT is a evidence-based mind-body therapeutic tool. It's often referred to as a stress reduction technique. It kind of makes it easier for people to digest. You know, a lot of people find it really bizarre to think that you can tap on the body and it has such a great result. But it is evidence-based. There's a lot of evidence, a lot of research behind EFT now. There's more than 120 published papers. And in all different areas, from post-traumatic stress disorder to anxiety to trauma in hospital. You know, children who go to hospital for extended time. There's a lot of there's research about that now. Research about using it for children in schools to improve their emotional regulation and learning. There's a whole body of research when it comes to EFT.
So what does it, we mentioned the tapping and the body connection, but what does it actually look like? So if you were watching someone run a session,
Sure.
Could you describe to our listeners, what does it actually look like in a session?
Yeah. In an EFT session, the practitioner will do the tapping themselves and the client will tap on themselves generally.
So you don't touch the client, they mirror what you're doing to your own body.
They mirror what you're doing, unless they're very upset, because with EFT, you often don't see this aspect online. It seems to be, really gentle online. But when you start using EFT, emotions can come up that a person has been storing in their system for their lifetime. And we resolve those in the session. But at the time, if someone's crying, it's a bit hard for them to tap on themselves. At that time, I would ask permission to tap on their hand for them. Generally. But for the most part, people tap on themselves, and that way it's empowering, and we're using their words where it's a bit different, because we're used to reframing words and trying to make things into positive. Where in EFT, we're not doing that. We're focusing on the painful emotions or sensations and really honouring those. If you think of it a bit like you have a cup of dirty water, and that dirty water represents all of our painful emotions and sensations. When we tap, it allows that cup of dirty water to empty, so that there's actually room for our natural state of being, the more positive state of being, whether it's peaceful or happy. So in EFT, we would begin with a setup statement, typically using the words that the client has used, and we would be tapping on the little finger side of our hand, and they would be tapping on the same spot, and we would do a setup phrase. So a setup phrase typically has two parts. The first part is acknowledging the issue, and the second part is a statement of self-affirmation. So an example of that would be, even though I have this anxiety and it makes me feel sick to the stomach when I think of driving, I still deeply and completely love and accept myself. That would be an example of a setup statement.
Mm. And do you help the client create that, or do you use their exact own words? Because I imagine for some people to be that unconditionally loving towards themselves would be really difficult.
Well, that's right. So that's where you have to meet the client where they are at. And you reword the ending, the self-affirmation part, in a way that fits for that client. And that might be just to say, even though this happened, I'm still a really cool bloke, you know. Or it could be, even though this happened, I'm still open to being open to loving myself.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a matter of finding where the client's at throughout the whole EFT process. And through the statement, initially the practitioner formulates the statement from what the client has shared using their words, because it would be a bit overwhelming if you're coming to a session for the first time and all of a sudden have to make your own setup statement.
Yeah.
But as time goes by, you invite the client to start formulating their own. And after the first session, you give them homework to start doing EFT on themselves. It's typically the first session, you're teaching them how they can use it in their everyday life, which makes it very empowering. There's not a lot of tools where clients can take away the first day and start using it straight away.
And do they use that same statement throughout the course of treatment, or does it change to each situation? Like, how many sessions does it take? Do you work on one kind of emotion for a few sessions? Like, what's the kind of setup of that?
So the setup statement, the pattern doesn't change. It's always the honouring the issue, following the self-affirmation. How that statement is said changes as you progress through a session, because normally new things will come up, or they won't have the same intensity of emotion, sometimes even after one round. And so you'll check in and say, well, what's happening now? And then you'll formulate a new setup statement. And so it changes depending on the moment throughout a session, and certainly throughout sessions. How many sessions someone needs really depends on them and their history and what they want to create. For example, if someone's had a car accident, it's a very specific event you're working on. So often you can resolve the trauma associated with that car accident in one session.
Yeah.
If it's, sometimes you might need more than one session and working on different aspects, the memory of the event, how you respond to sounds now, different smells, they all might be different triggers, and you might need to work on those. For somebody who's experienced longer term trauma, well, then there's many traumas to work on.
Yeah. So you've already mentioned there a few of the different, I guess, things that EFT is good for. So you've mentioned some trauma, and I would imagine something like a car accident might fit into the PTSD category.
Yeah.
What are some other, I've heard that it's also helpful for pain relief, for managing dieting and cravings, or even trying to get on top of your finances when our emotions are kind of dictating our behaviours. It seems that the EFT can be a way to break that cycle.
Absolutely. When we're talking about finances and abundance, we look at what are our beliefs behind money and spending money and the availability of money, all those stories that we got as children that added to our programming around money.
Yeah.
Then we can work on cravings. There's been a lot of studies into using EFT for cravings, and it's very successful. I remember after one of my trainings in level 1, we work on cravings. We do a group EFT exercise, And one of my students rang me a week after and says, I'm so upset with you, Khadine. I'm like, oh, why? She said, well, we did that cravings exercise on Tim Tams, but I can't even enjoy hot chocolate anymore. Because we're working on the emotional attachments that don't serve us anymore to that particular food.
So is it looking more at when we're using, like I know you mentioned with finances, it's like your beliefs about money and availability of money. So what would be an example of maybe something that's hooked a person into a negative relationship with finances, or, can you share an example of what that might look like?
Yeah, so typical family stories are money is always hard to get. Sometimes people will feel uncomfortable with seeing a certain amount of money in their account, and you might apply EFT to their comfort of having money in their account. We're taught that money doesn't grow on trees. If you think of all those statements that we've all heard about money, or money's dirty, or money is the root of all evil, which is just ridiculous. Money is just an exchange of energy. What people do with it is up to them. So we look at those belief systems that we're so programmed into.
Yeah.
When it comes to finances, and so we always look at different aspects. But you're asking what else we can use EFT for, and we can use it obviously for the abundance and the cravings. We can use it for post-traumatic stress disorder. There's a lot of research looking into using EFT for war veterans, extremely successful. Gary Craig, the founder of EFT, he has a documentary on YouTube you can watch, and it's incredible. I use it in my trainings. It can be used to prove health conditions. For example, I had a client who lives with Parkinson's. Not a typical health condition we relate to trauma, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, she wanted to work on the event that she feels triggered the Parkinson's for her. So we didn't work on the Parkinson's, we worked on a traumatic event that she identified as being important. We worked on that event once. Previous to working on that event, she used to shake pretty much her waking time. She used to wake up 9 times a night to go to the toilet. When I checked in with her a couple of weeks later, she couldn't even remember what we worked on. And this was an event that used to replay every day for her.
Wow.
No, that's great. Well, what's changed? Well, I'm hardly shaking anymore. If I do, it's only for half an hour if something upsets me. Great. What else has changed? Oh, I'm sleeping through the whole night now. I'm not waking up to go to the toilet anymore. Fantastic. What else has changed? I can take a joke now. Great. By the way, this is what we worked on, because you always test. And she says, I don't think about that anymore. And when I think about that person, I have no reaction anymore. I would have had a major anxiety attack.
Oh, that's an incredible transformation.
It is. And, that's where we never know when we experience trauma, how it actually plays out in our health, in our body.
One of the key things that I've noticed in EFT, and it's similar with a few other modalities like in particular ACT and a few others, where the first hurdle for people is accepting their situation at the moment for what it is. And do you find that that's something people struggle with? So until they can accept that, yes, I'm in pain and this is what caused it, they can't move through the tapping and through some of the others.
No, because the tapping kind of takes care of that.
Yeah.
A person doesn't even need to believe in tapping for it to have results. So they don't need to really accept where they're at, because through the process of tapping, often it just totally transforms and changes. Yeah, so it's different in that way. They don't have to make a conscious decision for that. Same as in EFT, we don't need to make a conscious decision to turn a bad experience or an unhappy experience into a positive. We don't need to do that, because once you tap away that and release that dirty water as such, a person just makes the shifts themselves naturally. They'll get new insights. If they've had a level of discomfort that's a 10 and they're down to a 1, they're just not going to have the same association to that person, event, or physical sensation that's upsetting them. So the positives just naturally occur through the process.
And how long does a session normally last? Is it your same sort of 50-minute session?
Yeah, about an hour.
Yep. And can you do that? Is it always face-to-face? Is it online? Can you do it as a group? What are some of the different ways that you can use EFT as a practitioner?
Great. So particularly for social work, it's such a good tool. We can use it on ourselves. And one of the great things is when we're using it in practice, it reduces rates of vicarious trauma, because while you're listening to whatever a person's sharing, you're also de-traumatising yourself at the same time. So it's great for our self-care. It's obviously great for working with individual clients, and it's also a wonderful tool for using in group work. Sorry, what was the question again?
Just some of the different ways that you can use it. So, you said group work. And so in a group setting, would each person have the same problem that they bring into therapy, or can they each work on their own thing? So one person work at cravings, one person work on finances, one work on a childhood.
Work on one topic.
Okay, so the whole group would work on, let's say, finances.
Yeah, finances or stress, anxiety or cravings. Typically you would have a theme when you're running a group, and you'll be working on that theme. And it's more global when you're working in groups, because you're not getting into the deeper specific for each person, yet it's a really safe way to begin. And in group works, it really builds bonding very quickly when you're using EFT.
Okay, wonderful.
They're bouncing off each other. During EFT sessions, when it's individual, we can do it face-to-face, we can do it online, say over Zoom, or we can do it on the phone. Sometimes I'll walk in the park with a client and I'll meet them in the park. It's very flexible.
Okay. And you also, so in addition to delivering EFT therapy yourself, you also train other clinicians and practitioners. So can you tell me a bit about the training you run in EFT? And you've got a few other ones as well.
Sure. I provide EFT training around Australia, currently in Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, and next year I'm coming to Melbourne. So I'm really excited about that. The training is practitioner level, so it's not like you're attending a day and it's just, the basics. It's actually practitioner level training that I offer. It's endorsed by the AASW for 44 CPD points when people complete it. It's very practical. EFT training is always very practical. There's theory, and a lot of the theory I get my students to do before they attend class. So I have a component of online learning that people do before they attend, and then we revise that so that we have more time to do the practical in class. And then the assessments that people need to do if they want to be a practitioner. But that's optional.
So once someone does your level 1 EFT training, what are they qualified to be able to offer? What can they do once they've completed that training?
Level 1 is not practitioner level, it's a basic level.
Okay.
Level 1 is EFT you would do either on yourself or teach clients how to do on themselves.
Yeah.
So it's the beginning. Level 2 is practitioner level.
Mm-hmm.
Once people complete the assessments for that, then they can be an accredited practitioner and get, even if they weren't a social worker, they could get insurance for that. And level 2 would do more advanced techniques that you can't really do on yourself. So they're more practitioner level techniques.
Okay, and so once someone's done that, they can then use EFT as one of the therapeutic tools in their sessions with clients.
They can still do that with level 1. I mean, level 1 has great tools that you can use to help your clients, just not on as deep a level as level 2. Yeah, level 1, you can still teach your clients how to use basic EFT on themselves after their first session with you. You can still get great results in cravings and trauma and anxiety and stress reduction just with level 1. It's just that the level 2 is more complex and not techniques we can generally do on ourselves.
Okay, and how many hours is the level 1, and then how long's the level 2 course?
Sure. Level 1 is 3 hours before you attend, so the online learning is 3 hours, and then the training is 7 hours. Level 2 at the moment is 2 days,
Okay.
so that's 14 hours. And then for people who choose to do the assessments, then there's the assessment time on top of that. If you add it all up, it comes to about 44 hours all up, including assessments, which is why you can get 44 CPD points.
Okay, awesome. So having used EFT yourself, what are some of the things that, I mean, you shared an example earlier where you were just kind of, you did it on yourself and you felt like, oh, I didn't think I had a connection to this particular topic. But is there anything you've learned about yourself through this process, or anything that really stood out to you as kind of a personal growth or a moment of realization by doing the EFT tapping training?
Oh, look, there's so many. I've used EFT to improve my health and well-being on so many levels, whether it's reducing the pain for the pain disorder I live with, or transforming my relationship with my mum, or just dealing with everyday stress and anxiety. I did a fasting recently at Easter, and I hadn't had emotions come up during fasting before, but this time I had all these feelings of abandonment come up while I was fasting. I'm like, oh, well, I haven't been stuffing all those emotions down with eating. So I was using EFT to get through that. You know, it was either give up fasting or EFT. So I used EFT to get through that emotional discomfort that I was feeling during that. But it certainly has really transformed my life. I wouldn't be able to be travelling around the country teaching as I do without EFT.
Wow, that's a huge difference, considering you said you were, at the early days of social work, found it quite difficult to get engaged with the academic side. To now be training across the country is a huge change. You've come such a long way.
Well, I used to fall asleep. at TAFE and uni.
I think we all did. Don't worry.
Oh, no. Yeah, so it has made a major difference to my life, and it just inspires me when I use it with clients, or even in training and demonstrations, and see and be a part of the transformation that happens in people's lives.
Wonderful. So you've got a little bit more information on your website. Do you want to give listeners some information on how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. If you want to go to my website, it's embraceempowerment.com. There's information there about EFT and the other services that I offer. You can certainly find me on Facebook, and that's it. Embrace Empowerment EFT Tapping Training. They're the easiest ways to find me. Yeah.
And I'll put a link to those in the show notes so people can click on those. So just going back a bit before we sort of start winding down, what are some of the tools or resources you can recommend to maybe early career social workers or just new graduates? So either things you wish you knew, or just pieces of advice for those just stepping into the wide world of social work.
There's so many. The biggest advice I can give people, social workers, is to have an open mind, because often different workplaces can be limiting in their culture, and some of the culture in workplaces don't really meet the expectations that have been set at uni in regards to self-care and access and equity in the workplace, for example. And I think it can be easy to become disillusioned.
Yeah.
Because there isn't that. So I think the big thing is to be mindful of your own ethic and to have an open mind. Like if I didn't have an open mind to what I wanted to do with my social work practice, I wouldn't be travelling around the country teaching now.
Mm.
But I knew that I needed to find a way that I could be a social worker, because I love being a social worker, and work for myself, ultimately.
Yeah.
What I do now. So our biggest asset and tool is really ourselves and our own framework of thinking.
Yeah. So really to keep an open mind and not to have those rigid expectations that you kind of hear about at uni, because workplaces might not have that.
Yeah, and be true to yourself. Be mindful of the different cultures in workplaces.
One thing that comes up on that is we talk often about the importance of supervision. I mention it, I think, in every podcast episode when we talk about self-care and burnout, we talk about the importance of supervision.
Yeah.
And a lot of our listeners have mentioned that in their workplaces, that's not often offered to them in that kind of robust way. So I think it does come down to that expectation again, that every workplace will understand what a social worker is, and you'll have a supervisor who's qualified and experienced and can help you through those. What's your experience with that? Did you find it difficult to have good supervision in workplaces? Did you need to source it externally?
In women's health, my supervision, at Cumberland was really good. I had really good supervision there. And at Katoomba, I had great supervision there. At others, not necessarily so great. And in other organisations I've worked in, supervision is more like, are you doing your job?
Yeah, it's that line management. How many on your caseload? How are you going? Any exits, any intakes?
Yeah,
great, done.
Right. But not about you and your professional development as such.
Yeah.
And there's no care in that.
Mm.
So I need to take responsibility for that. And as an EFT practitioner, I have my supervision with other EFT practitioners. And that's a part of our supervision. We're tapping and exploring practice from an EFT perspective. And then I go to different groups. If you're a member of the ASW, there's a eco social work group, there's a LGBTQI social work group, practice groups. That way I can connect with other social workers and to discuss any issues that I have in that level if I want to connect on a social worker level.
Yeah, I really like how you mentioned you had to take some responsibility for that, because I think that's really challenging for social workers. Is often we feel like we're giving so much to other people, and sometimes we feel like nobody's got our back, and then we have to, on top of that, go seek out our own supervision. But I know it can be really challenging for some people. I just think it's such an ethical responsibility to make sure you're connecting with other practitioners.
Absolutely.
To keep check of yourself, because I just did an interview prior to this on burnout, and we can't we can't keep giving once we've burnt out. So it might not be today, it might not be this year, but we really shorten our work life, our career life expectancy, if we're not checking in with that.
And that's why EFT is a great tool. I know a lot of my students that are social workers or psychologists, now that they're using EFT, they're feeling less fatigued at the end of the day when they use EFT with clients, because they're tapping on themselves at the same time. A lot of my students will tap in between clients on themselves, or have a practice where they'll do some EFT at the end of the day, just to release the stress of the day or the stress of the workplace.
Yeah, I think that's a really good strategy to kind of make sure that you can kind of not compartmentalise, but debrief and then go into the next session fresh.
That's right. And it's, really easy self-care, so easy to do. You could do it anywhere. I mean, you can be at a stressful meeting and be squeezing the points in your fingertips and nobody would know.
Yeah. Yeah, I often teach that to students around, to young, like when I work in schools, for some mindfulness and meditation type techniques where you can try and you can squeeze your hands under your table. You can have all these kind of tools and deep breathing that nobody can see you doing.
Exactly.
And any kind of parting words of wisdom or advice for the audience? So you've mentioned having an open mind and a little bit about workplace culture. Any resources that they can go look into? Anything you want me to put in with the show notes?
Oh, look, resources really that will differ depending on a person's interests. And I think it's really important to stay passionate about what you're passionate about. I know a lot of social workers, they'll start working in one area and feel like they can't go and work in another area of social work, and it's really limiting to think that.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, there's so many possibilities as a social worker, and we don't have to stay working for other people, and we don't necessarily have to stay just using the tools that organisations expect us to have. And I think ultimately, if it works for you, consider private practice, because you can be so creative with private practice and how you choose to do private practice. For me, I'm not a Medicare provider or NDIS provider specifically, and that works for me because I like to do things a bit alternatively. But for other people, being able to get that Medicare provider number ultimately and do sessions through NDIS and victim services, well, it's a great way to work for yourself and be a social worker.
Absolutely.
And be passionate about what you do and have variety in your work.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're responsible for enjoying our work and not getting burnt out.
Yeah, and I think that's really hard for people because we know that, you have bills to pay, you have mortgages or family, you have that sort of stuff, but it is worth taking a bit of time out to think what's going to be the most nourishing for me, because you can be so depleted. The work is so tough, and we're often dealing with the most difficult stories of people's lives, and that's our whole day.
Yeah, all organisations just keep taking and taking and taking from us.
Oh, yeah.
I used to find that the organisations and the other workers is far more stressful than my clients.
Yeah, that's an interesting paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of power plays in social work and a lot of politics in workplaces. Social work is not void of that, unfortunately. That's why it's important to stay true to your own ethics. We can look at different areas of social work, and the workplace cultures, are really terrible in a lot of them, or how they view clients is not necessarily very empowering for the clients. And that's where you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror every day and say, am I being the best person I can for my clients?
Yeah, and I think that's really important is rewinding that to what are your values? Like, am I sticking to my values? Am I doing work that I'm comfortable with? Is it honest? Am I being honest with myself? They're really big, difficult questions to have, and we often have them with clients, but we don't have them with ourselves.
They are big questions, and they're good questions, particularly in the current environment where services more and more are expected to function like businesses.
Yeah.
And the more and more that happens, the clients actually are becoming second rather than first. Profits are becoming first, and then clients second in the environment that's currently being created by our government.
Yeah, it's I guess we have to keep that advocacy component of social work, because it is a very difficult climate where things are based on performance and outcomes and measures of, I guess, either client load or caseload that maybe don't reflect the actual work being done.
Well, exactly. It often doesn't reflect the actual work that's being done or progress being made. And sometimes it's a bit more about hours you put in rather than the output and the results that clients are getting. Yeah. And it kind of, it just does my head in. And that's why I couldn't work for an organisation again, because my focus is very much about my clients and what can I do to build capacity for them, to help them feel more empowered and be more empowered in their own lives. Like that's my focus, and that's why I love doing what I do, because I can do that.
Absolutely.
But working for an organisation, I can't always do that to the same level.
Yeah. Well, we could have a whole other episode just on organisational change, and maybe we'll park it there. But thank you so much. So just to let people know the show notes will be on the website. Check in with what Khadine's doing. You can look at embraceempowerment.com. You also have there a free ebook that people can sign up to the mailing list for, so 15 minutes and under self-healing techniques.
I do, and soon that will be changing to a free 1-hour EFT course.
Excellent. So will people get notified of that through if they're on the mailing list?
Yeah, if they sign up to the book, they'll be on the mailing list, and so they'll get notified of that.
Excellent. And then listeners can receive $50 off EFT training if they mention the podcast. So get in touch with Khadine, and hopefully we'll have some people coming to visit you in Perth and Melbourne. And where else were you going?
Sydney, Brisbane, and I'm working on my online live training as well. So it'll still be live but online for all the people who are unable to travel. It'll be on Zoom, so there'll be breakout rooms, so they'll be able to practice in real time. I'll be able to still observe them, and they'll be able to ask me questions in real time, so that's exciting.
Wonderful. Some really exciting things coming up.
Yes.
And hopefully we can meet face-to-face when you're in Melbourne for a coffee.
Yes. Okay. I'll be in Melbourne in February.
Great. I can show you all the local coffee spots.
That'll be lovely.
All right. Thanks so much, Khadine.
Thank you, Marie.
Bye.
Have a beautiful day.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for today's episode's resources, and don't forget to click subscribe and review us wherever it is you get your podcast.